Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. Alright, so I'm responding to a question that I got on the channel, I think it was today. And that question was, let me find it. Give me a second here, let me find the question. It's very simple, I already remember it, but for some reason I feel the need to read it. And that question simply was, I would like to know what he thinks of the Eightfold Path and of Buddha. So my first response to that question is, I would like for everybody who watches this channel and who enjoys watching this channel, I don't care if you're brand new or if you've been watching it for years, what I'd like for you to do is learn how to search within my channel for videos. Because I have already made videos about Buddhism. And so that individual, I appreciate the question. And that individual could also have simply searched my channel for Buddha or Buddhism, and she would have found probably more than one video at least. So I want everybody to do that. If you don't know how to do that, learn. On a desktop, when you go to the thunderwizard.com YouTube page, if you don't know how to do that, just go to YouTube and type in Thunder Wizard and you'll see my page come up. You can, on the menu there, you'll see, you go across, there's a magnifying glass. On other devices like iPhone and iPads, there maybe is a little pull-down menu. Learn how to search within a channel, because then you don't have to ask those kinds of questions. Having said that, I do enjoy questions that allow me to talk about things that I think are worth talking about. So I'm going to talk to you today about my thoughts about Buddhism. Let me be clear. I am not a Buddhist. I am not a follower of that religion, of any sect of Buddhism. I am familiar with it, but I'm not deeply familiar with specific practices and beliefs and doctrines of the different sects. But I do think that there's some value in talking about it. I'm going to be talking about what I believe the real core Buddhist tradition originally was. I'm going to talk to you about my understanding of where some of the different Buddhist traditions have come from and why they're so different. And I'm going to tell you, most importantly, I'm going to tell you why people are karmically set up to become Buddhists. And why would somebody have a karmic destiny to become a Buddhist? And what the astrological significance of being a Buddhist is, and what that tells me. If you're somebody who has become a Buddhist, and you've been doing it for any length of time, I already know a lot of things about you, and without having met you or looked at your astrology chart or anything like that. But I already know a lot about you. And I know what your main karmic reason on this earth is for this lifetime. Let me be clear that there is a lot about Buddhism that I find I respect a lot. I think there's a lot of things about it that I already practice intuitively, but it's hasn't been formalized. And I also like to look, when something has a religious costume to it, which Buddhism does. Buddhism has a religious costume to it. I always like to peek underneath the skirt and see what's really underneath it. So I like to do that. So first off, I'm going to follow the suggestion that was made to me, which was to answer the question what I think about the Eightfold Path. But before we do that, I think it's important to look at the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. So we'll do that. So the first noble truth of Buddhism is that all existence is suffering. That's actually not a very good translation, but the word, if I'm pronouncing it right, is dukkha, which can be translated as suffering, anguish, pain, or unsatisfactoriness. I'm going to give my own word here, which is unfulfillment. I think that's a much better word. All existence is unfulfillment. And I'm going to even define existence. I'm going to define existence as physical manifestation. I have no idea what a Buddhist would say. That's what I would say. All physical manifested existence is unfulfillment. It's an important word. I want you to hold on to it because we're going to come back to it later. Unfulfillment, or just fulfillment. Second noble truth is that the cause of unfulfillment is craving. See, that makes better sense. The cause of suffering is craving. That brings with it so much judgment. And one of the things that I'm going to say here is that in my experience, many Buddhists who think they are being spiritual by denying their craving, in my experience, are actually in denial. So there's a difference between somebody who understands the dance of unfulfillment and somebody who is avoiding their own pain, their own discomfort. Just having for some people, just having desires is really uncomfortable. So the cause of unfulfillment is craving. Let's be clear, craving is not desire. Desire is something else. Craving is intense, to the extreme. You crave drugs when you're a drug addict. So the desire of unfulfillment is craving. And craving, to me, already defines something that cannot bring fulfillment. So you're free to take those definitions with you. So all manifested existence is unfulfillment. The cause of unfulfillment is unfulfillable craving. That's the second one. The third one, the cessation of unfulfillment comes with the cessation of unfulfillable craving. Doesn't that just sound much better? To me, it does. That sounds like something I can accomplish. When you translate it the way it is translated superficially lots of times, all existence is misery. The cause of misery is desire. The cessation of desire comes with the cessation of suffering comes with the cessation of desire. It's just so boring. Right? Why am I not getting my fourth noble truth in here? What is happening here? I'll click that button. The fourth noble truth. There is a path that leads from unfulfillment, which is the Eightfold Path. So let's not leave this just yet. Again, I want you to hear the judgment that is inherent in the way it's translated. It's inherent in human beings because human beings, for the most part, as you know, I go up against victim mentality a lot in my teachings. And a lot of people just carry with them a victim mentality for all kinds of understandable reasons. So if you come at everything with what you bring with you. And if what you bring with you is pain and victim mentality and wanting to escape, self-hatred, self-judgment, then these Four Noble Truths will definitely line up with all of that and give you a way to deny and run away from your true self. And every religion can be abused in this way, can be used as a way to distract you from your true essence and your true feelings, which include all kinds of feelings, both positive and negative. And we live in a physical body that is filled with a brain, and it is filled with hormones, and it's filled with instincts and desires built into it, because we wouldn't survive in the physical world if we didn't have desires and cravings and instincts. As I was doing research for this, I went across something that said, the reduction of ego. I don't like seeing that, because there's a judgment in that. You're not allowed to have a sense of self. Well, if you don't have a sense of self, you can't survive either. So let's get rid of all that ridiculous judgment, which is nothing more than a projection of one's own self-hatred. So let me translate it again, and now listen to it with, first off, with what I believe is the knee-jerk response that hasn't been thought through by a lot of people, which is coming from that place of self-denial, self-shame, self-rejection. So let's do that. So number one, all existence is suffering. Well, the first person, like somebody who's attracted to Christianity, is going to hear that, because a Christian is going to say, yes, this world is evil and sinful. Both of them give you this feeling of life is painful. You've probably heard that. Buddhists tell us that life is painful. All existence is suffering. Well, once you hear that, if you're a victim, you're going to go, yeah, I'm in pain now, and they're going to be listening for the rest of it. Number two, the cause of suffering is desire. Yes, I'm so filled with desire. I want to be loved. I want to be happy. I want to be rich. I want to be prosperous. And those are bad, right? Oh, so the cause of my misery are all of these desires that I have. Number three, the cessation of suffering comes with the cessation of desire. Oh yes, I'm so spiritual. I don't have any desires. I don't have an ego. I don't have a self. Somebody who doesn't understand what this is can immediately go right into that. And then the fourth one, and this is when people get trapped and lost and actually doom themselves. There is a path that leads from suffering. Oh, tell me what to do. I have to wear this thing, and I have to shave my head, and I have to do this every day, and I have to live in a temple, and I have to do all of these things and live this. Okay, so I can avoid my feelings through all of this religious dogma and discipline. And now let's listen to it from a different perspective. Let me give you another assumption, because everything in your world is an assumption. And I'm talking again about critical thinking. This is really important, because we're going to be talking about the intellect very soon. Because Buddhism is a religion for the intellect. As I say in the title here, as I've titled it, I say the Buddhist path, how to discipline the rebellious intellect. So we're going to get to why people become Buddhists to begin with, and it starts with that. But let me give you the assumption. Now take on a different assumption. So imagine this is your baseline assumption, which means you don't even think about it. It's just how you see the world and how you see yourself. And then listen to it in the way that I think it should be translated. And the assumption is that you are an infinite being, a soul with infinite bliss and infinite joy. That is your essence. And you incarnate into physical form in order to fulfill desires that your soul has. Now, your soul can't fulfill any desires when it's in infinity because it's already in bliss. You can't, there's nothing to achieve. You're everything, you're everywhere, you're all joy, you're all happiness. That is the essence of the soul, is pure joy. Pure light, pure joy. That is the essence of the soul. And that is what you are at your essence. If you don't realize that, I understand, and I also empathize and have pity for you, because that is a sad state of being. And there's a lot of people walking around this earth who have absolutely no realization that their essence is joy. And it's also not something you can force on yourself. They've got a lot of issues they got to work through. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to trivialize it. So you come here in a limited form, which is an ego. Again, people talk about the reduction of ego and getting rid of ego. And all they're really doing is they're self-denying and self-shaming. And so getting rid of the ego is meaningless, because without an ego, you can't function. Ego is just the Latin word for I. It means self. You have to have a healthy identity, a healthy sense of self. When you have a healthy sense of self, you know what you truly want. A lot of people don't know what they truly want. They walk around through life thinking they know what they want, among other things. On one hand, they'll think they want a lot of cars, and they want a lot of women, and a lot of sex, and a lot of money, and a lot of this. And that's obviously, going to lead to unfulfillment, or dukkha. It's going to lead to that, because there's no fulfillment there. A lot of people, on the other hand, go the other route and say what they really desire is to be truly spiritual, and so I'm going to deny myself all the earthly pleasures, and they think that's what they truly want. And it's not. In there is their true desires, the desires of their soul. You've come here to fulfill them. And you can't be in a place of needing to fulfill a desire if you're infinite. So you have to be finite. In this physical body, because the physical body needs to survive and needs to procreate, so you have all kinds of desires in the physical body. You need to eat, you need to drink, you need to sleep, you need to rest, you need to have sex, you need to, evolve within whatever your species is in order to be able to, find out what your social status is, so you can do your part in the play of that species continuing to survive. So there's an evolution of all these different desires within you that are not your soul. And then you have your soul, which has now grafted itself in the heart center, which is, there's a reason why, if I don't mention it, remind me to tell you why the Buddhist mantra Om Mani Padme Hum is so important for Buddhists. Remind me to tell you that. Your soul is in your heart center, and it has grafted itself to this body. Now, in order for the soul to interact with three-dimensional limited reality, it has to have a computer, and that computer has to have software. The computer is the brain. The brain is the computer. And the software is the intellect. Got me? The brain is the computer and the software is the intellect. The intellect is not the mind. This is one of the main lessons that people who are destined to be Buddhists have to learn. That the mind is not the intellect. And that's why so many Buddhists are so over-intellectualized. They're so over-intellectualized because their karma is to differentiate between the mind and the intellect. So the soul sits here in the body, and it has a spiritual desire, and now it can fulfill that desire because it is encased within this limited physical body and three-dimensional reality that has a limited self. Hi, my name is Mahadeva. Even though that's my spiritual name, that's still, I've got an ego, an identity around that, and I'm proud of that identity. And now my soul can fulfill its desire because it has been forced into three-dimensional reality. Bear in mind that we only see get ready for this. If you haven't heard it, I want you to meditate on this. We can only see, not just with our eyes, but with mathematics and any kind of technological recording system, we can only interact and detect 5% of the entire universe. 5%. 95% of the universe is made up of dark matter and dark energy. Dark doesn't mean it's black. It means that it doesn't interact with light, which means we can't see it. It doesn't interact with matter. We know it's there because it leaves evidence that it's there. And so we can see the effects of it, but we can't detect it, we can't touch it, we can't interact with it. And that doesn't even include the 95%, doesn't even include things like gravity and space-time and other things that you and I can't touch and see. I'm not talking about the things in the universe that we can't physically touch and see. I'm talking about everything that can be detected and measured in the universe is only 5%. The rest of it is 95% of stuff we don't even know what the hell it is. We just know it's there. So your intellect is the software that binds us to the 5% of the universe. This is Buddhism is about how to transcend the 5%. And I'll talk a bit more about that. So that is your assumption. So I'm giving you a different assumption now. Remember, the first assumption was come from a place of victim mentality, and then I gave you all existence is suffering. The cause of suffering is desire. The cessation of desire comes with the cessation of suffering comes with the cessation of desire, and there is a path that leads from misery, from suffering. Now let's look at it from the assumption I just gave you. You're this infinite being of light who has chosen to become finite so that you can have desires and fulfill them. 1. All existence, 5%. All 5% existence is unfulfillment. Means that you're in a constant state of desire, always. That's not bad. According to what I just gave you, that's the necessary ingredients for the soul to achieve what it wants to accomplish here. It has to have a desire, has to have a goal, or it has no purpose for being in this limited body. All 5% existence is unfulfillment. 2, the cause of unfulfillment in the 5% of reality is desire. The cause of unfulfillment is desire. That seems pretty obvious. That's right. When I want something and I don't get it, that gives me unfulfillment. Okay, that makes sense. So this isn't the four, the five, spiritual laws of Christianity, which are setting you up to feel like crap. Which is, that all humans are born in sin, that man cannot come to God, only Jesus. That's setting you up and weighing you down so that you have to go and then pray to Jesus for forgiveness. If you look at it that way, all existence is suffering, the cause of suffering is desire, then you're already being guilted into this thought process of getting rid of all your desires so you can go. It's nonsense. You're here to experience your desires and fulfill the desires of your soul as opposed to the unfulfillable desires of your 5% reality. All existence is unfulfillment. The cause of unfulfillment is desire. The cessation of unfulfillment comes with the cessation of desire. How do you cease desire? You can't. You can fulfill it, but you can never get rid of it. So I want you to hold on to that. If you came here to fulfill your desire, the cessation of unfulfillment comes with the cessation of desire. How do you do that? You fulfill that desire. 4, there is a path that leads from unfulfillment. Is that path one that takes you away and magically wipes away your desires? Or is it a path that focuses your intellect so that you can take practical action to actually fulfill your desires? I hope you're getting a completely different understanding of Buddhism, not from a religious perspective, but from a perspective that I believe that it may have actually come from. Okay? So those are the 4 noble truths. Let's take a look at the Eightfold Path. First, let me see how many people are on here. This is a question and answer. Okay, I don't have to make that speech right now. So that desire has been fulfilled. I don't need to make that speech. The Eightfold Path. So here's the path of, depending on how you look at it, getting rid of all of your desires or fulfilling them. Fulfilling the true desires. 1, right view or right understanding. Being able to see things for what they truly are. Now do you understand why I have given so many videos talking about critical thinking? If you don't know how to do it already, go and search my videos for critical thinking. Watch that over and over and over again. Right thinking, if you listen to that from a religious perspective, it means it brings with it judgment. Oh, I'm wrong thinking. I'm thinking about it wrong. I'm bad. I have right view. It's not what it's saying. It means seeing things for what they are. Seeing things objectively. So that's the first one, is right view. Second one is right intention. Again, if you hear that from a Christian perspective, you're going to, the righteous, the holy, no. This is an intention that practically can be fulfilled. So it doesn't mean being without intention. It means having a fulfillable intention, a practical intention. Here, this one says, an unselfish desire to realize enlightenment. What the hell am I supposed to do with that? That is so filled with so much religious judgment and garbage. I hate that. The unselfish desire. Who here listening to me is completely unselfish? And how can the desire for enlightenment be unselfish? It can't be. There's no such thing. Be proud of it. If you have a desire for enlightenment, enjoy that desire. Fulfill it. And what is enlightenment? My definition of enlightenment? When you have all of your thoughts and your feelings, positive and negative, and you allow yourself to have them and merge with them without judgment. You don't judge yourself for being sad, angry, lustful, hateful, murderous, joyful, happy. I mean, there's enough guilt in here already to make somebody feel bad for feeling joyful and for wanting things in life or having hope. Have whatever feelings you have without any judgment, and then take what's going to happen next, then take conscious action. Action that is constructive, which again, we're talking about being practical. And the practical path is the path towards your fulfillment. Right? So right view is number 1, right intention, right speech. Oh, that's the one after this, right speech. What is right speech? Not holy speech or saying the right thing or pleasing God. It's speech that practically achieves what you want. Now, there's a shamanic reason for this. All speech was originally a magical act. Whenever you spoke, you actually created with your speech. When I used to teach acting 30 years ago, it's been that long, oh my God. 30 years ago, I had a theater company and I taught acting in my theater company. And I would help them understand that you're not there to pretend to say something. You actually have to feel it and say it. And you have to know what it is you want to accomplish with your speech. Because as an actor, your character never speaks unless that speech is going to accomplish something. So you have to know why, your intention for why you're saying something. And so I was sharing with them, I had been reading some article somewhere, and it was a tribe in Africa, and the way that they used to fell trees was they didn't used to get out an axe and chop it down. The whole tribe would gather around the tree and yell at it and scream at it, and the tree would die. It would die from that, and then it would fall over. And I was trying to explain to them the power of their speech. Your speech originally was a magical vehicle that accomplished things. So to speak mindlessly without the awareness that your speech will go and do something is wrong speech. It's not right speech meaning being righteous. It means speak, and whenever you speak, be aware of what you're going to achieve energetically with your speaking. So that's right speech. Here it says using speech compassionately. That's only part of it. There's a lot of people who use speech compassionately and they end up being passive aggressive because they're not aware of who they are. So they go, oh, they see this and they go, oh, I'm going to speak compassionately. Oh, no, that looks good on you. No, if you want to do that. No, your ass doesn't look big in those jeans. That's your body type. It looks okay for you. Right action. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the big one, right action. That's what I was talking about earlier. When you have all of your thoughts and your feelings without any judgment and you're fully aware of them, you don't stuff them down and try and deny your thoughts and your feelings because they make you uncomfortable. Then you take action regardless of your thoughts and impulses. I should have included impulses. No matter what your impulse is, you take the constructive action and then be conscious of that. You can't know what your constructive action is if you don't have all of your feelings. I just talked about how somebody can use right speech as a way of being passive aggressive. Well, if somebody is passive aggressive and they're trying to practice right speech, it means that they're not fully conscious of their feelings. They're not conscious of their anger. They feel guilty about it, so they stuff it down because they want to look good. They want God to love them or fellow Buddhists or Christians to love them, and so they speak with compassion, but they're filled with rage and anger, and it comes out passive-aggressively because they're not aware. You cannot be constructive if you're not aware. You can't be aware if you're judging yourself for all of your thoughts, feelings, impulses, and desires. So, number 1, right view. 2, right intention. 3, right speech. 4, right action. 4, right livelihood. And this one says on this path here, making a living through ethical and non-harmful means. I have to say that's got to be a really meaningless way to make a living. How about making a living that not on what it doesn't do? It doesn't cause harm to people. Bird agrees. But how about making a living in a way that empowers you and empowers others? Right livelihood. I teach that all the time. I teach that in the lockdown package. I teach you how to find your perfect career. I would say I'm following that. My entire income comes from what I'm doing here and getting clients and helping clients and sharing things with you. My entire living is about benefiting your life and mine. So for me, because I'm the only one that can judge myself, I'm following that, and I try to follow that every day. Have a right livelihood, right effort. This says cultivating wholesome qualities and releasing unwholesome qualities. Just the judgment in that, it's the superficiality of that drives me crazy. Right effort, if we put it back to practical, it is a practical thing to put your effort towards that which will bring results. And what is going to bring results will always be those things that are empowering for yourself and for everybody else. So we'll talk about why do they have to have this? Why do religious people, like why do Christians and Jews have to have a 10 commandments? Why do they have to have the 10 commandments? Why do Buddhists need to have this eightfold path? If I don't talk about it, remind me and I'll talk about it. So that's got to be 6. 7 is right mindfulness. I would say that's being aware. And then right concentration. All right, so those are the 8. That's the eightfold path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I'm here to say that this eightfold path, the way that it's presented, is an illusion. It's a necessary illusion, and I'll explain why. Because without it, the people who are destined to practice Buddhism, without this eightfold path, they wouldn't be able to accomplish what Buddhism wants to achieve in them, which is taming their rebellious intellect. So let's review on why we're here. If you're coming into this, late, we're here because our soul, our infinite soul, wants to express and fulfill its right desires. So in order to do that, it needs to be in a limited 3-dimensional avatar, which is the human body. In order for the soul to interface, it needs to have a computer, which is a brain, and it needs software, which is the intellect. Not the mind, but the intellect. So all of these things I just mentioned, if we go at it again, they only have value to the intellect. What is the intellect? The intellect is a word in Latin which means to pick apart from among. Intellegere means to intellectualize, to think. Intellect is that which has picked things apart. Leggere, leyer means to read. Read literally means to pick apart. So when you're, especially Latin, because Latin didn't used to have spaces between words. They were just all strung together. And you had to pick apart the words from all of the letters. So when you were reading something, you were literally picking apart. There's 3 letters, that makes a word. There's 5 letters, that makes a word. Reading is picking things apart. And the intellect picks things apart. Now, if we don't pick things apart, we can't function. You have to know which side of the street to drive on. In this country, it's on the left side of the street. I had to teach myself when I first got here. Every time I got on the road when I first got here, because obviously I'm from the States, I would have to tell myself left side of the road, left side of the road, left side of the road. If I didn't do that, I would just automatically just go on the right side of the road. And that happened a few times. Like late at night, I'd want to go to the store, 7-Eleven for something, and I'd get in the car and I'd be driving along and holy crap, there's a car coming right at me. Oh yeah, I'm on the wrong side of the street. So this is what the intellect does. The Buddhist religion is a karmic path for souls who in previous lifetimes got lost in their intellect. There's a reason why. First, let's talk about what I believe Buddhism is. There's all different kinds of sects of Buddhism out there. There's Chan Buddhism, also known as Zen Buddhism. There's Tibetan Buddhism, right? And anyway, there's just all different kinds of Buddhism, and they all do different things. We'll get into that. Maybe we'll get into that in a second. But each one of those different sects is also not the original Buddhist path, in my opinion. Buddha, if you do any research on Buddha, Buddha was very clear. Did not come here to teach anything spiritual. Nothing. He taught nothing about the afterlife. He taught nothing about the soul. That's why a lot of people believe that Buddhists believe there is no soul. That's not true. Buddha just never taught about the soul because he didn't think it was of any value, because it didn't have any practical value to him. Why? Because he was here to find spirituality through his intellect and his intellect alone. So Buddhism is the spiritualization of the intellect. And when people asked Buddha, why don't you teach about the afterlife? And there's in one of his sermons, there's an exchange between, or one of the written scriptures about him, which I believe to be accurate. Which I'm saying a lot of the stuff written about him I don't think is accurate. But there was an interchange between him and one of his students. And the student walks in and says, Tathagata, the perfected one, listen, I've been following you for X amount of months or years, however long it's been. I've been following you a long time. And I'm waiting for you to tell me about the nature of the soul. Does the soul exist? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? What happens after death? Are there gods and demons and spirits? And I'm waiting for you to tell me about that. I mean, this other stuff, this right thinking and right action stuff is great, but I'm waiting for this other stuff. When are you going to tell me about that? And in the poetic version of it, Buddha responds and he says, my dear student, when did I ever tell you I was going to? And then he goes through the whole list. When did I ever say that I was going to teach you about the soul, about the afterlife, whether there was a heaven or a hell, or whether there was gods or demons, or when did I ever say I was going to teach that to you? So the only thing that I have ever taught is that attachment brings unfulfillment. And the way to reduce attachment is to reduce your unfulfillment. That's the only thing I've ever taught. That's the only thing I'm ever going to teach. So if you're waiting for me to teach you, and then I think he goes through the whole list again, what happens in life after death, and if you're waiting for all that, it's not going to happen. So I'm bringing that out because there are Buddhist traditions like the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which goes deep into deities and into life after death and reincarnation and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. None of that has anything to do with what Buddha taught. Buddha, if you were to bring him the Tibetan Book of the Dead about what to do after you die and how to go through all the different things, he would go, what the hell is this? I have no idea. Or if he did have an idea, he didn't tell anybody. He says, this isn't anything that I teach. He didn't think it was practical. He said, what I'm interested in is how you can have a pleasant life in this physical realm. That's all Buddhism was about for him. The other thing you should know about Buddha was that he was not a vegetarian. I know that's shocking to the Buddhists. He was not a vegetarian. He ate meat. He also died of a horrific disease. So the whole better than now Buddhist vegan thing, and if you do this because Buddha did it and all unhealthiness comes from eating, that didn't come from Buddha either. He ate meat. By the way, as I understand it, who's the guy in Tibet? The Buddhist leader in Tibet, I forget the name of it offhand. He's now been told by his doctors he has to start eating meat because he's getting sick because he's not getting enough nutrients. Sorry, all of you better than thou Buddhist vegans. Sorry. Let me get rid of that for you. That need to feel superior to the rest of us who don't follow your path. All right, so what else can I share with you here? Here's something else that I've found with Buddhists. Now, let me talk about my experience of Buddhists. So I've shared with you my experience and my understanding of, I'm not going to say Buddhism because I think Buddhism is a religion. I'm going to say what I have gleaned on what I believe to be the true history and intent of the man Gautama Buddha. Now let's talk about Buddhist religions. As you know, many of you know, I practiced Taoism for a long time, and I was a Taoist mystic martial monk. Excuse me. And so I know something about what Taoists believe and what they teach and all of that. And Taoism is really shamanism. It's as shamanic as you get, because Taoism is all about working with and balancing the yin and the yang, the male and female, the 5 elements. And Taoism, by the way, is not Lao Tzu. So I remember running into somebody years and years ago, and I said I was a Taoist, and they said, "Oh, I love Taoism. I read the Tao Te Ching all the time." And he was really philosophical, and he said, "I love the philosophy." And I said, "That's not philosophy." He said, "What do you mean that's not philosophy?" He says, "I've read it. It's really deep and intellectual." I said, "No, it's not. That is a practical application on how to live. You don't understand that everything that's written in the Tao Te Ching is about gathering, containing, and processing life force energy. It's practical. It is based on how to get as much life force energy in your body and in your spirit as possible, and to achieve immortality." And he was looking at me like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, that's got nothing to do with a philosophy. It's a life path." Taoism also has, if you think, oh, Taoism is reading the Tao Te Ching, you don't know that Taoism has all of these really complicated spells and rituals, and you have to do this and offer the hairs of the red fox, and then you have to get and kill a bird and sacrifice the little bird on the thing and the blood on that, and people are like, "Oh my God, it's polytheism." It is really hardcore, serious polytheism. And within all of that, they also have this understanding of the Tao, which means the way. And the Tao doesn't mean the path, it means the emptiness. When you get to the path of the Tao, you have gotten rid of all of the extremes and you found balance and you're in the Tao. That is Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism came through Chan Buddhism, and Chan Buddhism was what happened when Buddhists from India came to these Taoists and started teaching Buddhism to these Taoists, and they went, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool, man." And they started practicing Buddhism from a Taoist perspective. That's why Zen Buddhism is so associated with emptiness meditation, which came from Taoism. It's Taoists that taught that. In fact, when the Shaolin temples started springing up all over China, which they're practicing Chan Buddhism, a lot of them didn't know anything about energy work. They just went straight into trying to have this emptiness meditation, and they ended up getting sick. So a lot of them were getting really sick and getting energy sickness, and their energy was really stale. And so what did they do? They went to the Taoists and they said, "Hey, can you come help us?" And the Taoists came and taught them about the 5 elements, and taught them about how to breathe in the microcosmic orbit, and taught them about the 3 ones, and taught them about the 5 elements. And then what you end up hearing about later in Shaolin, you hear about Damo. They call him Damo, and that's a Chinese, transliteration of Bodhidharma. So there's this mythology of this guy named Bodhidharma, who was supposedly a Buddhist from India, who came over to China, and he went into, because of all of the, the sickness that was going on with the Buddhists, he went into a cave and he stared at the wall for, I forget what it was, 9 months or 9 years or something like that. And then he came out with the 5 elements and how to work with the 5 elements and the meditations. And it's just Taoist 5-element work. What they did was, because they're Buddhist religionists, they couldn't bring themselves to say, yeah, we've adopted Taoist principles. Because one of the things I found with Buddhists is they act just like Christians in that they want to, they want to incorporate everything and say it's Buddhism. So they made up this mythology of Damo going into the cave and meditating and then coming out with this 5-element theory on health and healing. And all it was Taoism. And the same thing in Tibet, same kind of thing. Now, Tibetan Buddhism is very different from Chan Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism, you have intense ritual. You have hardcore tantric mantra and ritual and so many deities. You have deities, and then you have Buddhist shamans. So you have shamans that will go into trance and they will prophesy. So we have all these things that aren't part of Buddhism. They're part of, they're a mixture of 2 things. They're a mixture of the indigenous shamanism of Tibet and Hinduism, tantric, hardcore, esoteric Hinduism. And that was because of, I forget the guy's name. Somebody reminded me. I keep wanting, it's not was it Vajrasattva or was it, I forget the guy's name. Somebody will remind me. There was a Buddhist monk in India. A Buddhist monk in India who, before he converted to Buddhism, was a Hindu tantric master, which means he was a master of not sexual tantra. That's not what tantric means. He was a master of ritual and mantra and all of that, and then he converted to Buddhism. So he did what Buddhists do, and he turned the gods of Hinduism and turned them into different Buddhas. So for instance, Tara, like Tara is one of the goddesses of Tibetan Buddhism. Tara is a Hindu goddess. So they took all of the gods and goddesses from Hinduism and brought them over into Buddhism and changed a lot of the names and turned them into Buddhas. Like a lot of the names for the Buddhist, what's his name? The healing Buddha. It's actually one of the names of Shiva. They just simply took the names of Shiva and made it into, some kind of Buddhist thing. And so that's why you have all of these Hindu mantras, including Om Mane Padme Hum, including Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Swaha. Those are all Hindu mantras that were translated into Buddhism. And what they did with the shamanism is that, according to the tradition, here's how the tradition goes, the mythology, is that when this guy, Padmasambhava, I think his name is, Padmasambhava came over to Tibet at the request of the Tibetan king, because what was happening is that the king had become Buddhist. So the Tibetan king had become Buddhist, but there was all of these Tibetan shamans around. And so the shamans, according to the mythology, were sending spirits at him, demons. So they were doing these rituals, to fight against him magically because he was bringing this new religion in, which was a threat to the shamans, obviously, because the shamans made their living by doing their shamanic rituals and work, right? So this was a threat to their livelihood. So they started, according to the tradition, started doing all these rituals against the king. So the king was getting attacked or getting sick or who knows what. So he sent off this message to Padmasambhava in India and said, will you come and help me? You're a Buddhist and I'm a Buddhist and I heard you were very powerful and wise. Can you come and help me? So he comes over and he starts doing all of these rituals and this tantric magic. And according to the tradition, when the shaman spirits would come at him to fight him, he would convert them. He would use his tantric magical powers to convert those demons into Buddhists. And now those Buddhist demons, or excuse me, those Tibetan shamanic demons are now the protectors of Buddhism in Tibet. And so that's why when you go to Tibet, you want to practice Tibetan Buddhism. It is totally different from the kind of Buddhism they practice in China or in Japan, Zen Buddhism. It's like there's just no connection. And so this is going to all come back to why Buddhists come into this life in order to bring their intellect under control. So before I go any further, before I do any more bad-mouthing of people's religions, let me explain to you from an astrological perspective what Buddhism is. So, according to astrology, we have the 9 visible planets, or the 7 visible planets and the 2 nodes. And among those planets is the planet Mercury. Now, what do you think the name for Mercury is in Sanskrit? Buddha. It means perception. It means intellect. Of course, I don't really know what this is, but the actual guy named Buddha was spelled with 2 D's. I don't know why that is. Somebody who knows Sanskrit can tell me why. But it means the same thing. It means intellectual perception. Because Mercury is the planet of the intellect, not of the mind, but of the intellect. And so there are 10 avatars for Vishnu. So in Hinduism, you have the 3 gods, the Trimurti, which are Brahma, which is the creator, Vishnu, which is the protector, and Shiva, which is the transformer or the destroyer. Vishnu is the protector, and Vishnu is the only one of the 3 that is said to incarnate in physical form, because he represents the soul. The soul is the only one that incarnates. That's why we have 3 selves, but only one of them gets all of the credit, which is the soul. We have a lower self and a higher self, and we have a middle self, which is the soul. We identify with the soul. It's all about the soul. The upper and the lower self are here to serve the soul. And so Vishnu represents the soul. So the avatars of Vishnu represent different paths that the soul must go through. So one of the avatars of the soul is Buddha, which is Mercury. So each one of the avatars of Vishnu is also connected to one of the planets. Rama is the sun, Krishna is the moon, Buddha is Mercury. So when Buddha incarnates, here we have a conflict of interest, because the soul, Vishnu, is infinite, and the soul has no desires, and the soul needs to accomplish nothing. Buddha, on the other hand, the intellect, is the software in the brain that allows the infinite soul to achieve its practical goals in three-dimensional reality. So if Vishnu were to incarnate in human form from the mercurial vibration, he would be a saint who completely disregards the spiritual, because he's 100% in the intellect. So what happens is he takes the intellect to the highest level, but it's still the intellect. The intellect can only pick apart what happens in the 5% of manifested universe. The other 95% of the universe, the intellect has no idea what it is. So that's why when you ask Buddha, can you tell me about life after death? He's going to go, when did I ever say I was going to teach you about life after death? That has no meaning to your life here on this earth. I'm only here to teach you how to be free of attachment so that you can have a pleasant life on earth. I don't know about the rest of that. It has no value to me. Now that is what Buddha said. And Buddha said that because if we go by the tradition, he was the incarnation of Vishnu from the intellect. He was pure intellect, but he was spiritual intellect. So people who are destined to become Buddhists are people who have been stuck in their intellect in previous lifetimes. And they come into this life still having a vibration of wanting to be trapped in the intellect. And so to free them from the intellect, you use the intellect. This is why Buddhist meditation is about compassion, and it is always focused on the heart. Because the heart center is where the soul exists, and the soul and the heart is also connection with other people. Because what the intellect does is it separates us. It separates us from other people. People who are trapped in their intellect can't communicate their feelings. So when I do a chart on somebody and I see that they're Atmakaraka, which is the planet that is, overall guiding their life. When I see that their Atmakaraka is Mercury, I know that I need to give them a piece of advice. And that piece of advice is, it's really important that you express your emotions to people, because as it is, you think you're communicating and all you're doing is talking through your intellect, and people can't feel you. So they feel you don't care about them. You have to talk from your feelings. Buddhism is the religion where the intellect must focus on the heart center of compassion. And so it is a fusing of the compassion and the intellect, the head and the heart. And that's why Buddhists, my experience of Buddhists is that they can be so freaking intellectual. They can go on and on and on and on about the nature of the self. Like even when I say, when Buddhists want to talk about the nature of the soul, one of the first things they want to say is, actually, Buddhism doesn't believe in a soul. They're so trapped in their intellect. And but it doesn't say, the truth is that Buddha didn't disbelieve in the soul. It just didn't have any practical value to him, so he didn't teach about it. But he did talk about the ego, or the self. And the ego that he was talking about, or that Buddhism talks about, to eradicate the ego, is the false ego, which is created by the intellect. Because the soul is your original self, your original ego. But in order to believe in the soul, you have to go beyond the confines of the intellect. And you have to believe in things like life after death and life before incarnation and all those kinds of things. Buddhism doesn't focus on that. Well, Buddha didn't focus on that because he was the avatar of the intellect. Does that make sense? Now, one of the other things that the intellect does is the intellect likes to take hostages. The intellect also likes to take credit for everything. I'll give you an example. I've shared this a bunch of times. I'll probably share it again. I had a student 15 years ago. He was in high school. It's so weird. That guy's got to be, approaching 30 now. He was just a high school kid. He probably has kids now. Anyway, he was in high school, and he was telling me about, I forget what I was teaching. I was teaching something about energy work. And I was teaching about how you can't think, you can't use your intellect to transmit energy. So when I would say things like be water or be metal or be fire, you don't think about it. You operate from your feelings. And I was saying, the brain will come up with all kinds of justifications to explain things it doesn't understand. What I really meant was the intellect. And he said, yeah. And he shared this experiment that he had heard about in some psychology class he was taking or something, where the way I remember it is that in the experiment they had people whose corpus callosum was severed. Corpus callosum is a small bundle of nerves between the two halves of the brain that allows the left and the right side of the brain to communicate with each other. So the feeling side versus the intellect side. And when that is severed, then the two halves of the brain don't communicate, completely with each other. So if I remember it correctly, they would whisper into one side of into one ear, "Get up and walk across the room." And then the person would get up and walk across the room and sit down, and then they would ask the other side, "Why did you walk across the room?" And the person would say, "Because I was thirsty." It had completely made up a bullshit reason to justify getting up and walking across the room. That's what the intellect does. The intellect comes up with bullshit reasons to justify things that it doesn't understand. So this also comes about in Buddhist religion as well. So I already shared with you what the Shaolin guys do. Like the Shaolin Kung Fu guys are all about, that Dhammo or Bodhidharma came up with the 5 elements. And before that, when in reality, that's not what happened. They went to the Taoists. But they don't want to, they've got an ego around it, and they don't want to say that, the Taoists help us. So they come up with this magical Buddhist who comes out of nowhere from India and tells them about the 5 elements that the Taoists have been practicing for thousands of years before Buddhism ever came along. And this is also why Tibetan Buddhists also have to turn the Hindu deities that they worship into Buddhas. And they call them Buddhas. And they claim that they came up with these deities, when in reality they were grandfathered in from Hinduism. And so again, I'm not bagging any of these religions. I don't have anything against Shaolin Buddhism. I don't have anything against Zen Buddhism. I don't have anything against, in fact, I really like Tibetan Buddhism for a lot of different reasons. The point I'm trying to make is that these are the characteristics of the intellect. And you're going to find the faults of the intellect in any one of these religions. Let me give you another example. I'll go in the exact opposite direction. So Vishnu being the heart center and being the heart center and being the soul, you see this in other Vishnu traditions. Christianity is a Vishnu tradition. Even though there's no Hindu avatar of Jesus, Jesus is definitely, some kind of weird sort of ricochet offshoot of Vishnu avatar, definitely, because he represents the soul center for sure. He was definitely the avatar for the Piscean age, without a doubt, because Pisces was about those in power and those who served those in power. It was all about slavery and power, and that's what you see in Christianity, which is God the Father sacrificing his innocent son like a victim who didn't want to go, forcing him to go and kill himself. But you see it in Krishna worshippers. Krishna worshippers, if you talk to Krishna worshippers about Shiva, they'll go, oh yeah, Shiva, that's an emanation of Krishna. Oh yeah, that God, yeah, that's Krishna. Yeah, Jesus is Krishna. And Christians do the same thing. Everything is Jesus. That's the heart center. That is the heart center, the heart chakra, when it is operating from its immaturity. Because the heart chakra wants to connect. The immature phase of operating from the heart chakra is bringing everybody to your religion. So that's why you saw the Hare Krishnas, and they always had the bowl out and they were dancing and they're constantly bringing people into their religion. That's why people who go into cults are people who have issues about not feeling loved and not being connected. They just want to be a part of, guys who end up in gangs, same thing. They're just lonely. They didn't have a dad, so they join a gang. And why those people in those religions go and say, no, ours is the true religion. Come be one of us. It's the heart center. It's because the heart center is doing what the heart center does, which it wants to connect, wants to be a part of other people. But it's immature. So it says you have to come and be part of my thing. You have to do my thing with me because I've got the right path and the right intention and all that and that. And then what happens when the heart center evolves beyond that? It goes, oh, yeah. Oh, I see. So the Hindus are saying the same thing as, that's pretty cool. Oh, yeah, the Buddhist guys are saying, oh, that's pretty cool also, man. Oh, so that Jesus guy said, so he didn't make it up. The Buddhists were saying that before Jesus was born. Oh, that's pretty cool, man. That's when the heart center goes, okay, you don't have to be part of my thing. That's really cool. What is it that you do? I want to check that out. But you see this in Buddhism because Buddhism, the tantric Tibetan Buddhists want to turn all the Hindu mantras into Buddhist mantras, and the Shaolin guys want to turn all of the five-element Taoist stuff into some Buddhist thing. And that's the insecurity of the heart center. That's the insecurity of the heart center wanting to evolve past so that it can, get past all of that. So people become Buddhists in this lifetime because they need to connect the intellect with the heart. That's why they talk about the mind all the time. The mind is something different. The mind is not the intellect. The intellect picks apart. The intellect says, that's up, that's down. I've got the right thinking and the right action. You have the wrong religion. The intellect does that. The mind goes, wow, I can totally see the connection between that, and I can see the connection between that, and oh, those all come together, and it connects through emotions, through energy. This is what the mother is. Mothers always want to bring the family together. That's why the moon represents the mother. This is why Mercury represents the offspring. It represents specifically like the eldest son. Because the eldest son is rebelling against dad doesn't do this right and mom, and I'm going to go do my own thing. It's separating. It's doing its own thing. Okay? So those are some of my thoughts about Buddhism. And just know that anybody who comes into this life as a Buddhist is doing so because they are seeking to fulfill their desire. Their sole desire is to fully, completely indulge in the intellect. Even though the intellect is actually at odds with the soul. Because the intellect is about finite, practical reality, and the soul is about infinite experience. The intellect can't feel emotions. That's why Buddhism is so associated with seemingly non-emotional, non-attachment. That's why Buddhism is so associated with getting rid of the ego, the self. Because the intellect is all about separating and being the ego, the identity, the self. So it's an ironic twist that the universe agrees with the soul when the soul says, no, I really want to experience spirituality through the intellect, so I'm going to be a Buddhist next time and I'm going to completely just figure it out. And what ends up happening is that the soul then, through the intellect, connects to the mind and connects to the soul, and that's where that mantra of Om Mani Padme Hum comes from, because it's about connecting to the soul, the heart center. So it's kind of ironic that way. All right, so those are some of my thoughts about that. I am willing to take some questions. And again, the best way to interact with me is to ask an honest question. If you don't ask an honest question, there's a good chance I might use my intellect to chop you to pieces. So let's see what goes on here. Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All. Question: how do I best fulfill my Rahu desires and keep myself from trying to deny those desires? My Rahu is in Sagittarius in the 7th house. Well, I mean, how do you best fulfill your desire is very easy to answer. We'll get to the Rahu part in a second. But the best way to fulfill your desire is to become conscious of what you truly want. Not what you need, or not what your ego or your fear or your desire to, impress others or any of that. Just your soul desire. So, I mean, lockdown.thunderwizard.com. If you guys want to know, I teach 3 things that, by the way, is going to go away here very soon. But I give 3 certifications. I give a Vedic astrology certification. I give a certification in rune readings. And I give you, it's not a certification, but I give you a course on how to teach people how to find their true career, their perfect career, which is just another way of saying finding your true soul desire. So I take you through very simple questions, and I'll do it again. If you have heard these questions, forget about them, because when you know what the questions are, you try and get ahead of me and you ruin the whole point of it. So the first question is, if you didn't have to worry about money, if money wasn't a part of life, you just simply had all of the resources that you need to do anything and everything you wanted. So that's number 1. You don't have to worry about money. Number 2, you don't have to please anybody. So you don't have to meet your parents' obligations, your parents' wishes for you, society. You don't have to look good. You don't have to have status. You can do the most ridiculously stupid, pointless thing in the world. So you don't have to have any money. You don't have to make anybody happy. And 3, you don't need to follow any rules. You can do anything you want, no matter how bad, no matter how wrong, no matter how silly, or no matter how impossible. If it means, being able to jump 100 feet or have 10 heads and 6 horns, if that's, what you want, you can do it. And then 4th, the only requirement is that you have to do only that thing that you and only you really enjoy doing. Under those conditions, you don't have to worry about money, you don't have to please anybody else, you don't have to follow any rules, and you can only do that which you personally and selfishly want. What do you want? Now, if a desire doesn't immediately come up that gives you happiness, what is the one thing that just gives you just joy, just for the sake of it, just joy? If you don't know, if the answer doesn't come up, it means you're in conflict. It means you're stuck in your intellect. It means that, because your intellect is what also fights off enemies. So people who have a lot of emotional problems are usually very intellectual. They're usually really smart, because you have to be smart to be able to outwit your abusers, your parents, your whoever, so you can avoid being attacked. They're the worst to talk to, because when you get in an argument with them, they'll just out intellectualize you all over the place. And they're just a pain in the ass to be around. Um, so if the first thing that happens when I ask you, what is it that gives you joy that you truly want? If you're honest with yourself and you don't know, that's okay. It means that you have conflict, that you're in a war between your soul and your intellect. So I would even go so far as to say that a lot of people born Buddhists or people who are in this lifetime are meant to become conscious of that conflict. So in the next lifetime, they can actually fulfill their desire, because then they won't have that intellectual block in them about their feelings and their joy and all the rest of that. So in terms of how do you best fulfill your desire, you do that. How do you best fulfill your Rahu desires? Well, the thing about Rahu is that Rahu will never bring fulfillment. Rahu is the severed head of the snake. So the snake here represents physical three-dimensional desires: money, sex, power, anything associated with all those, quote, negative things. Nothing wrong with those things. It just means that Rahu is the ultimate expression of that, which means that if you completely try and go after what your Rahu's doing, you're never going to be satisfied. So you're asking me, how do you fulfill the unfulfillable? You can't. Your lesson is that your Rahu is in your 7th house, which means that you are constantly going to be thinking about relationships, people, parties, marriage, kids, the things associated with the 7th house. Everybody's different. I'm giving you a huge list, but that's where your unfulfillable desires are. Now, your destiny in this life is you have to go after that. You have to go after that stuff, because that's what's keeping you alive. I didn't share about this before. When my dad died, my dad got bladder cancer. I don't know how old I was. I think I was in college. So I must have been in my early 20s. My dad came home and announced to all of us that he had bladder cancer. And he had his bladder removed, and he, all that stuff. And he lived. Had to have been 10 years. Had to have been. At least. And I remember just forgetting about the fact he had cancer, because it's just, he had surgery, and that was that. And he lived for a long time, and, did all the things he always did before, and was himself. And then when he was 72, I believe, when he was 72, he retired. And his job, his life, was physics, science. He was absolutely one of the most crucial people in the space race. He, at one point in time, it may still be true, he was credited with having created or designed more satellites than any one man in the world. He has satellites that are still in the Smithsonian Institute. Genius. And he, up until the time that he retired, he was coming up with these equations and things and that they're still trying to figure out, as I understand it. Last I heard, which was a long time ago, his bosses were saying, we're still trying to figure out, his equations. So he was extremely successful, and his whole life was about it. In fact, when he got married to my mom, one of the things he said was, if you want kids, you have to take care of them. My life is this. My life is all about, physics and astronomy and all that. So when he retired to go home and rest. He was dead 6 months later. Because what's keeping you alive is Rahu. But the lesson is that you can't get wrapped up in Rahu, because Rahu can kill you as well. Because Rahu represents drug addiction and prostitution and crime and thieves and biker gangs, and Rahu is all of those things. So if you go too far into Rahu can be a source of destruction. But opposite Rahu is Ketu. So your Ketu is in the 1st house. Your 1st house is your identity. So for you, your identity is lacking, and that's your karma. In a previous lifetime, you were all about, hey, look at me. It's all about me, 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 me. Look at me, and I did this, and I did that, and hey, why aren't you listening to me right now? I'm saying something. Hey, look at me, blah, blah, blah. And in this lifetime, your Ketu said, yeah, we did that already. So in this lifetime, you don't have an identity. So you blend in. So you have a very shamanic nature. You go into a room and you can't figure out what are your feelings and what are other people's feelings, because Ketu is the shaman. Rahu is the wizard, Ketu is the shaman. Rahu is the guy who comes up with the spells. Why does he come up with the spells? Because he wants to magically bring into existence all of his desires that he can never fulfill. He eats things that falls through his neck because he has no neck. So you have to take your strength, which is your Ketu, and balance it with your Rahu. Because your Rahu, if you just focus on Rahu, which is relationships, you're never going to be satisfied. You're going to get bored. You'll marry somebody and get bored and then cheat on them, or you'll find friends and you'll get bored with them and you'll move on, and you'll just get bored. It's not that you don't want it. You want it more than anything. It's just boring the crap out of you. Never fulfills you. Whereas if Ketu is in there, Ketu destroys it. So Ketu just takes away the desire. So if Ketu were in your seventh, it means you don't really want relationships all that much. There's just nothing about them that I want. Rahu is like, no, I really want them, but every time I get into one, it's never good enough. It's never the same. It's never what I thought it was going to be. So you can't fulfill your Rahu desires, but you have to go after them if you want to stay alive. Because in that will be your path, and then your lessons will be going after those things that Rahu has said, this is why you came here, to go fulfill that. So Sagittarius in the 7th house means you want to have spiritual connections and spiritual relationships. You want to have a spiritual marriage. You want to have a spiritual business. You want to have spiritual friends. You want to go to spiritual retreats. Those are the ways to make Rahu happy. Worshiping Jupiter, because Sagittarius is lording over your Rahu. So that is a good setup. It means that Sagittarius is sitting over there making Rahu a priest. Now he's going to be a black magician because he's Rahu, but he's going to want to find the spiritual truth in that. So your Rahu's doing pretty good, unless there's other negative things going on in there, or other negative conjunctions. Your Rahu's doing all right. I wouldn't worry about it. Slim Mill, question, your experience in telekinesis and that type of stuff. Have I ever talked about that? So I recommend that you ask me questions about what I'm talking about and what I've talked about in other videos. There's nothing wrong with that question. I have had some experience with it. I'm not going to share about it because it's a waste of time. There's nothing there. It's a dead end. Absolute dead end. Don't waste your time. That's what I can tell you about that. All right. I can't tell if this person's serious or not. We'll see. If they become a pain in the ass, I will block them, but they know who they are. Let's see who else. Padma Sambhava did practice tantric sex. Yeah, so you're missing the point. Number one, Amy, best thing to do is to ask a question. If you ask an honest question, you're going to get the best response from me. If you give a confrontational thing because you're taking something I said out of context, which is, that was an offhanded throwaway that I said, by the way, Tantra has nothing to do with sex. You have to now tell me how Padma Sambhava practiced tantric sex and had several consorts, and how does that benefit the conversation? How does that support me in what I'm teaching? Now we're looking about you, and now we know a lot about you. That you have a thing, you have some interest in tantric sex. So let's talk about it since you brought it up. Tantra has nothing to do with sex. Tantra means vehicle, practice, method. Tantra is about ritual. So the better way to say that is ritualistic sex. People take the word tantra and associate it with sex. Tantra does not mean sex, and it doesn't mean healthy sex or spiritual sex. It means nothing to do with sex. It means ritual. It means magical, esoteric ritual. You have to follow certain rules. You have to chant these words when the moon is at this exact thing on this exact day, and you have to wear this, and you have to burn that, and you have to do all these things. That's Tantra. In Tantra, there's all different kinds of rituals. There's mantra, there's, yoga, there's all different kinds of rituals and things you have to do. Among them, I would say like 2% of all of Tantra, there are sexual practices. So the real phrase is not tantric sex. The real phrase is ritualistic sex, because that's all it is. It drives me crazy. I knew a girl who says, "Oh yes, I practice Tantra." And I said, "What is that?" And she went through this whole thing about she knows these people and this teacher here, and it's this and that. And when the more I listened to it, it was she had this anti-male philosophy. She'd obviously been hurt or abused or something like that. And she used sex as a way to control men and pull the life force out of them. I know I didn't have sex with her, but she wanted to do all these pseudo-sexual things where, she sat on top of me and made me breathe certain ways. And she got all kinds of feelings and emotions and energy to come out of me. And she, vampired the hell out of me. But she didn't have the first clue about what Tantra was. So when somebody says that, Amy Luann, it makes me think you don't really know. And it annoys me. And it makes me want to come after you. So that's why it's best to only ask questions. Like you could have asked me the question, what do you know about tantric sex? And then I would have had a better answer. Instead of now I'm focusing on you, and it's giving me all kinds of things to pick you apart for. All right? Because again, now you want to bring us to this idea that tantric sex is going to make you an enlightened being. Because he had several consorts. And again, how do I know that? How do I know where you're getting that info? Is there any way that you can prove that? It's hearsay at best. And it's the kind of hearsay that people use when they want to justify their agenda. I'm okay, Amy Luann, if you're into tantric sex. I'm okay if you're into tantra and ritualistic sex and energy. I'm okay with that. In fact, I think it's wonderful and beautiful and a big turn on and sexy. But why do you need to turn it into enlightenment? Why do you need to take that and then justify that within yourself? This is what people do with weed, by the way. And don't get me wrong. As you know, I love the physical pleasure, so I'm not one of those people who badmouths any of that. I have a hard time with people who spiritualize their desires. I would rather people just be into their desires. You don't need to put a label on it to make it okay. You don't have to spiritualize it. Life is already spiritual. People do this with drugs. That's why people want to talk about shamanism and drugs and, well, what is the spiritual way to smoke weed? All that kind of stuff. They just don't want to admit that I like to, get out of my feelings through these chemicals, but I'll talk about it spiritually. So that's my take on people who want to, broadcast tantric sex as being some huge path within mysticism. It's not. It's this much. And among that, it was used for men. Men stayed celibate. They didn't ejaculate. And they were doing it to intensify their energy. So it wasn't even about sexual pleasure. It was just one of these many things that they do. And in order to be able to do it and benefit from it, You have to be so focused and so dedicated, and you have to be celibate. You have to be celibate for it to work. And that is not at all what most tantric sex practitioners talk about. Anyway, let's see here. Saying that one of his consorts was an enlightened being. What have I said about enlightenment? My take on enlightenment is this. Enlightenment is nothing more than having conscious awareness and acceptance of all of your thoughts, feelings, and impulses and desires. Having full awareness of all of them and taking conscious constructive action. The fact that that person was a consort who had tantric sex has this much to do with the fact they were enlightened. Assuming you're even correct. Assuming that information is even correct. It means nothing in the ultimate scheme of things. It's one of many. Let's talk about the right and the left-hand path while we're on this subject. And I'm not talking about the left-hand path in terms of Western magic. Their understanding of left-hand path is, sorry, I'm just being really honest with you guys. Western magic to me just doesn't cut it. It's so intellectualized. It's like driving an 18-wheeler through a slalom course when you can be on an electric motorcycle. The electric motorcycle is traditions that have an unbroken connection into prehistory. Western magic is this glomming together of Christian and Hebrew and Islamic stuff, and then trying to turn it into polytheist, and it's just so over-intellectualized, and it's just this big, giant lumbering. Have you ever tried to take a tight turn in a giant 18-wheeler? It goes. So I'm not talking about what they call the left-hand path. The right-hand path and the left-hand path. The left-hand path is Tantra, which is why ritual sex is part of Tantra. The left-hand path is Tantra, which means to fulfill. Tantra doesn't mean this, but the left-hand path, the goal of the left-hand path is to fulfill all of your desires. Is to indulge yourself in anything that you truly want consciously. You have to be conscious of it. If you're driven by your unconscious, you'll get trapped in it. So, for instance, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke, I don't chew tobacco, I don't drink coffee. And the reason why I don't do those things is because I've done all that. I've done my quota of that in this life. It holds no appeal to me whatsoever. So I have discipline about that. So I have a right-hand path view about those things, because I've accomplished whatever I was supposed to accomplish by indulging in those things. But other things that I haven't completely fulfilled, I seek to listen to what it is that I want, and I go do it, whatever it is, consciously. I always make sure that I'm consciously aware of or at least I seek to be consciously aware of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, even if I'm doing it for less than spiritual reasons. I want to know why I'm doing it, and I want to know what is the effect going to be. What's it going to be on me and others? And I'll bring it to my teacher. If I'm going to do something that seems a little sketchy to me, but I really want to do it, I'll go talk to him and I'll say, hey, I've been really wanting to go do this, and this is why I want to do it, and these are my feelings, and what do you think? Do I sound like I'm coming from a conscious place? And he'll either say, yeah, it sounds like you know exactly why you're doing it. Go ahead. Or he'll say, what I'm hearing is this unconscious thing about this, and you really got anger on your mother on this thing and that. And then I become aware that I'm not conscious of it, and then I won't do it. That's Tantra. Tantra is fulfillment of desires. When you fulfill all of your desires, then you'll achieve enlightenment, because there will be nothing left to hold you down. Right-hand path Buddhism is a right-hand path, because right-hand path takes discipline, and the discipline of denying yourself. So the right-hand path is no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, no violence, no meat, no cursing, no no possessions, no money. You're denying yourself all of these things because you don't have the consciousness to handle them. Because if you indulge in those desires, you will get lost. You'll become a drug addict. You'll become, a prostitute. You'll get lost in it. So in order to avoid getting lost in it, you have to practice the right-hand path. That's why Buddhism has 4 Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. And that's why they use the word right, which translates to us as correct. The good way of doing this and the right way of doing that. And that's why on an extreme level, why, people in Abrahamic traditions need the 10 Commandments. They need to be told not to kill people. I mean, really, you need to be told that? I was watching, I don't know if you've seen it, anyway, something about some narcissist guy who's, I don't know, marrying and scamming a bunch of women. And it's a documentary following the people trying to catch this guy. And so one of the guys whose wife was seduced by him, she took all of his 401k, stole all of his money, got together with this con man and went off somewhere else. And then they took that money and created a restaurant. They made this, put together this restaurant. And then as soon as the restaurant opened, then he took all of whatever money they'd made and took all of her money. So after she had been left by the guy she left and cheated on with, and after she had taken her husband's money, so he's off looking for her, and he starts talking about Jesus, and he starts talking about the Bible, this, and then in the end times, people are going to fight against each other and cheat on each other. And he says, we're in that right now. And he talks about Jesus. And then he went on to say, if I ever find that guy, I'm going to kill him. And he starts talking about murdering, in the same breath, he's talking about murdering somebody while at the same time talking about Jesus, and I'm thinking to myself, what? What a Christian. Just a lack of awareness there. Anyway, and he ended up getting her back. And then after all that, then he says, but I still love her and I still want her back. And I was split between, on the one hand, feeling so sorry for the guy, because I know what it's like to be so in love with somebody after they've left you. And at the same time, I wanted to say, dude, what the hell are you doing wanting her back? Do you see what she just did to you? How could you possibly let her back after doing that? She didn't try talking it over with you. She didn't, have the balls to sit down with you and say, I'm in love with this other guy. I'm going to divorce you for him. She didn't do it. She stole your money, didn't say anything, and left, and you want her back. And she ended up getting him back. After the other guy took all of her money and left her, she went crying back to her husband, and he took her back. And, anyway, I hope they're happy. Maybe they are. Maybe there's something I don't know. So, right-hand path is what I'm trying to talk about here. People like that, like the guy who talks about Jesus in one breath and murdering somebody in another breath, that guy needs the right-hand path. He needs to be given the 10 Commandments. He needs to be told you can't go murder somebody. Because if somebody doesn't tell him that, he's going to talk himself into going and doing it. So the right-hand path is people who need structure. So through the structure, the discipline of the structure, they will connect to their soul. That's what Buddhism is, a right-hand path. It's a path of structure. It is the path of the intellect. It is a path of the intellect having to discipline itself to do things it won't normally do, which is focus on compassion, focus on having no thoughts. Because what does the intellect do? It thinks all the time. It's constantly thinking. Thoughts are constantly popping into its head. Well, it is the head. So somebody who's been, whose karma is to follow the Buddhist path, it means that they need the discipline to not indulge in their intellect. So they're using the intellect because that's their, they're failing. They're using their intellect to discipline themselves into the state of the emptiness of the soul. That's why Buddhists are always talking about the heart. Because where they want to go is to be freed from the intellect and live in the infinity of the soul, even though they don't believe that, or they don't, they're not taught anything about the soul. Do you see it? All right, so that got me thinking about the right and the left-hand path. So I hope I didn't hurt your feelings, Amy, but yeah, that's why it's always good to I'm just telling you, it's better to ask an honest question than to pop out, especially if you want to correct me on something. I'm going to find out what your emotional agenda is, and I'm going to show it to the whole world. So I'm just letting you guys know, I'm a shark. Don't throw blood in the water. It's going to make me want to go after the juicy meat. Evie Marie Northstar question. What do you think about Vajrayana Thunder Dorje Varja Diamond Path within Buddhism? I don't think anything about it because I don't know anything about it. I would normally start going off on why are you talking about another path, but this whole thing is about Buddhism, so your question is within the scope of what we're talking about, but I can't talk about something I don't know anything about. Nope, I don't have any experience. Can't answer your question. DC Pagan question. In Hinduism, Mercury is said to be the son of the moon. What is the relationship between Mercury and the moon? Is it the son of the moon or the son of... It's the son of the moon and Jupiter, if I remember correctly. If that's correct. Mercury is the son of the moon, meaning that the intellect needs to serve the mind. And what normally happens when people are very intellectual is they try to use their intellect to divorce themselves from their feelings. Again, that's why people who smoke a lot of pot are so intellectual and they don't talk about their feelings. I don't know, man. I'm like sitting here looking at my thumbnail and it was like, I was thinking, man, there's like so many like molecules in my thumbnail and it's like, there's nothing's really there, man, but the molecules are there. And then I start thinking about like there's this whole universe in my thumb, man, and like in that universe there's like an earth in my thumb and there's a guy on that earth looking at his thumb and oh my man, it never ends. I'm so fucked up right now. Because it takes you out of your feelings. That's why people who smoke a lot of pot are really angry. That's why they're really passive aggressive. Because they smoke pot to get out of their feelings. The intellect takes you out of your feelings. The moon is your feelings. The moon is your mind. But do you see how it mimics the mind? That whole thought experiment. It's just, some of those philosophy majors with their thought experiments. Oh my God. What a waste of time. But man, I went on this thought experiment of like, what if the guy in my thumb in the universe of my thumb, what if he, how does that help you with life? How does that help you live life? The moon is all about connected contemplation. The moon doesn't think, the moon feels. The moon connects, the moon sees. The moon experiences, the moon knows. There's a difference between being smart and wise. Jupiter is like a good combination of the two. Jupiter is the knowledge that goes beyond speech, which is Mercury. Mercury is speech. And so Jupiter is deep knowledge that goes beyond speech, and the moon is the emotions. So you can, through your feelings, experience knowledge and wisdom. And the intellect can rationalize and compute and perceive and communicate wisdom. So that's why Mercury is the son of the moon, because the mind should come before the intellect. That you have to be able to feel and connect that knowledge. You have to be able to feel and connect with other people, as opposed to being a Hannibal Lecter, who's pure intellect and can sit there and look at you and slice you apart because of what fibers he sees on there and the look on your eyes and what you smell like and the kind of dust on your feet. He uses his intellect to figure you out, but he'll never be able to feel you. That's why he's a serial killer. So the intellect wants to rebel against the mind, but this is why, again, Buddhism is a great religion, because it eventually leads the intellect to the mind through meditation. Let's see what else. George Lagum question, is reincarnation time linear? I don't know. That's a great question. Makes me want to ask you why you're asking that question. Nobody asks that kind of a question unless they have an emotional agenda. You want to go back in time and fix something, or you want to escape this present time and go into the future, and then jump back, something like that. But to answer your question, I don't know. That's a great question. Do we reincarnate only into the future, or our next reincarnation can we be placed in the past from now? I don't know. I have no problem with any of that. I don't believe that time is linear. So I don't have a problem with people going back into time. I don't have a problem with that. Or jumping into the future. I don't have a problem with that either. I believe that there can be a place where there is a state of being where you can see all of time. You can see past, present, and future. I know that there are ways that if you could look back far, like, just light, for example, if we had the ability to have telescopes that were powerful enough, that would take us back to, say, if we were to go on some planet that was, 10 light years away from Earth and have a telescope that was powerful enough, we could actually look back into time and see, if we could look at the street 10 years ago. So that's definitely possible. But I don't know the answer to your question. George Lagum question, do ascended masters still reincarnate occasionally? I don't know. What are you asking me for? I'm not, as far as I know, I'm not an ascended master. Why do you ask the question? I'd much rather know your emotional need to ask the question. What do you want to achieve? How does that make you feel better? What do you want? Do you want to be an reincarnated ascended master? Do you think you are one? Do you want to connect with one? Your questions have an emotional agenda to them. I'm not judging it. I can feel it. For instance, one ascended master stopped reincarnating long ago because he has done everything he wanted in this reality, but then people invent some new thing like surfing. Does he reincarnate back here to surf? Well, sounds like you're talking about me. So yes, I was an ascended master, and I don't know, George. I'm just really interested in your question emotionally. I don't have a problem with any of that. My rational thinking, my logical thinking is once somebody's become an ascended master, they've achieved all of their desires, so they wouldn't have any, something new is created, they wouldn't want that. I think our soul pretty much knows what's happening. I think surfing was invented because somebody had a soul desire to do it. So my rational thinking says I don't think it's that superficial that somebody achieves all their desires and then, they go, oh, surfing was going to be invented after. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I want to do that. So the other thing that makes me think is that you're asking this question because you're afraid you won't get all of your desires met, that you'll achieve enlightenment, and then something that you really wanted to have happen will come back, which means that you still have a desire. So surfing isn't really the thing that I want. It's the vehicle that gives me what I want. There's something about surfing, the connection. The thing is, it's like, for me, it really is like connecting to infinity. It's the most spiritual feeling I can have. I have this communication with this invisible force that's moving this water that shouldn't be, like above my head, and have this force to pull me along. It feels like a connection. It feels like I'm having this relationship with this powerful friend. I'm out in the sun. I'm in the water. I'm connected to salt water, which is good for my aura. It connects me to the feminine. There's all kinds of things that are happening on all kinds of energetic and unconscious levels. That's what the desire is. Surfing is just the vehicle. So, for somebody, in the state of infinite being to mistakenly come to the conclusion that they've fulfilled all their desires, that is kind of a superficial, inaccurate perception of what it means to have achieved all your desires. So what will it mean if a soul hasn't achieved all its desires, and let's say surfing hasn't been invented yet? That soul will go in between lives and go, there's something still missing here. And what I want to do is I want to have this connection, and I've always loved the ocean, and I think, in this next life, I'm going to invent surfing because I want to, see what I mean? So I don't think that question, no. To answer your question, based on that, I don't think somebody's going to become an ascended master and have achieved all their desires and then decide to come back because they didn't get something. I think they'll figure it out and invent whatever it is that they want to give them their own happiness. Okay, what else? Cycles, or just George Lagam has another question. Can you have more than one soul desire to follow in one lifetime? Again, George, you're telling me so much about yourself. What I'm hearing from you over and over again is that you have a lot of desires and you aren't fulfilling all of them yet. You're afraid that you won't get them fulfilled. You're afraid the universe is not going to provide you with them. It's okay to have all those thoughts and feelings. You have more than one soul desire. You only have one desire at any given moment. So in my experience, people can shift during lifetimes. And I'm constantly asking myself, and if I woke up tomorrow and decided I was done with surfing, and I came and I said my new soul desires, I'm okay if that happens. The reality is that hasn't happened. I'm going to be 57 in like 10 days. I'm going to be 57 in 10 days. And in my 57 years of life, the one thing that has not changed in my whole lifetime has been surfing. There has not been one point in my life when I, even if, there are periods when I wasn't surfing, there was never a point when I didn't think about it all the time. Even when I was, when I was in Idaho for 10 years and I didn't surf that whole time, I dreamt about surfing every single night. And I started getting really frightened towards the ends of those 10 years because I stopped dreaming about surfing. And coincidentally, I started getting very depressed. And I realized that something was wrong, that I had lost hope. And so that's when I made the decision I was going to start surfing again. I was going to start doing all these things. And that's when, I didn't even, and I also recommitted to my marriage, to my now ex-wife. And that's when she started having all of her problems and destroyed the marriage. So thankfully she freed me to go fulfill my desires. But at this stage, I think that we really only got one major desire. It might express itself in multiple ways, but in my experience, people who ask your question are in conflict. So when people ask me, I think I have more than one soul desire, and you're unconsciously giving yourself confusion so that you don't act on the one. And it also allows you to indulge in desires that have to do with not your soul desire, but desires for feeling like a good person and being connected to other people and, following your unconscious programming. So I don't have a problem with people changing desires throughout their life. If you were to talk to me when I was 27, I would have said to you, no, my soul desire is to run a theater company and to be a movie star and to write and direct movies. And I would have been completely honest with you. I wouldn't have been lying. I didn't achieve that, but I definitely went after that until I started dying. And that's because now I've talked about it. My K2 is in the 5th house. So there's going to be a strong connection to what K2 is, but if you go after what K2 wants, you'll start to lose your energy. It'll start to kill you. So the truth is now when I think about acting, my ego gets bent out of shape sometimes, and I think, I should be in that movie and I should be doing that. And then when I think about how much work goes into it, what really, it's not just the fun of the looking at the performance. There's 10-hour days of sitting there like this while they're adjusting the cameras, and then you have to play the death scene, and then you have to do it, and then they're going to do it from the other side, and they're going to shoot it from here, and you have to do it exactly the same. And wait, my phone was like this, and what line did I touch my cheek? You said I touched on that, and you have to remember all that, and it just is so draining. And then you're sitting around, like this, and you're in your trailer for like 4 hours doing that. It's just boring as hell. It's just a lot of work. So when I think about it, the truth is, you couldn't pay me enough to go do that now. So it's not my soul desire. But I will spend all of my money on surfboards, and I'll spend all of my money to be in the best surfing beaches I can to surf, and I will, I'll reject clients, up the wazoo so that I can have, enough days to surf, and then when I'm done surfing, just lie around and sleep because I'm so tired afterwards. That's my soul desire. I'll die doing it. So to answer your question, George, no. I recommend, if you haven't already, go to lockdown.thunderwizard.com. If you haven't already, watch my videos. Again, guys, type in whatever soul desire into my channel and know how to look at it. I get these questions from people who obviously haven't watched all of my videos, and there's a ton of videos to watch, I understand. But they obviously haven't searched, because if they had, they would have gone, oh, he's already got a video on that, and they would go and have watched those videos. So, George, I think you need an education on what a soul desire is, so you need to get the book and or watch the videos called, in case people don't want to spend the $10 or $20 on a book, you can watch a free video. The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Go watch all of the videos and playlists about that so you can understand what a soul desire is. And if that doesn't do it for you, then I recommend you get the Lockdown package, because in that I've got a whole teaching about how to find the soul desire. I don't know how many, just tens and tens of hours of me giving you step-by-step instructions about how to figure that out. If you still can't figure it out, then you need to get a session with me or with somebody. I still haven't. Maybe I should do a. I'll ask you guys this: should I do a certification on life? On soul desire life coaching? Should I just create that? Should I just put another page on my channel for getting your soul desire reading? And should I have apprentices who have been certified by me, who know how to take you through that and know how to ask you all the questions. Should I train you guys how to do that? Let me know if you want that. It's going to cost you money, so don't put it down there and then get upset when I charge you money to certify you. Let me know if you want that. Cycles within cycles. Question is there black, tantra, white, and gray? I have heard that. Thank you for asking that question the right way. I have heard that there is such a thing as white tantra and red tantra, and I think that's just kind of over exaggerating the nonsense. The truth is there's just tantra. That's like asking, is there white magic and black magic? Magic is about influencing the universe. And magic is about desires. And if you're conscious of your desires and you're okay with your desires and you want to practice magic to achieve your desires, I'm okay with that. If somebody is practicing magic in order to harm other people under the delusion that's going to give them what they want, then I would say they're not very conscious, and you want to put the word black on it, go right ahead. It doesn't change the fact that it's just magic. The only thing that makes it black is your lack of consciousness and your evil intent. But, the thing about that is that it always comes back, because whenever you're doing something that doesn't bring you joy, you're working against your soul, even though you think you're going. That's a good example of somebody who doesn't know what they want. They're going after, like love spells to get somebody to love you who doesn't love you. Why would you want that? Why would you want to force somebody into loving you? Well, the only way you would do that is if you didn't believe that the universe loved you and protected you, and you didn't believe you were worth anything. Because why would you want to, that would be like having a zombie. Why would you want that? And so we create these red tantras and black tantras and sexual tantra, and it's just tantra. All right. Amy Luann, yeah. So I finally, yeah. Sorry, Amy, I did come down at you pretty hard there. My apologies for that. Let's see. Amy Luann's going to clarify. Okay, all right. So anyway, so apparently, I guess my intuitions about her were wrong there. She was just asking a question. Let's see here. Hoxton Tier, do I do Joe Rogan impressions now? I don't know. Are you being sarcastic? Are you saying that I look like Joe Rogan? Did I do something that was like Joe Rogan? I'm not aware of that. People keep wanting to compare me to Joe Rogan. The only connection I see is that we're both middle-aged ex-martial artists with a bald head. And we're both ex-comedians. He's just a lot more popular than I ever was. I actually did an audition. It was a movie that one of the things that actors do, the unfamous working, actors that have to work crappy jobs to make a living. One of the things they do is they will be what's called a reader. And so casting directors, if they know you, like they'll have seen you in something or you've auditioned for them or something like that, they will give you a call and say, hey, I want to give you a job. I'm casting a movie. Would you want to come in and be a reader? And they'll come in and pay you, however it was back then, $100 a day or something like that, to sit in an office all day while they come in and they audition the real actors that they're going to give the jobs to, but not to you. So I sat across from big names. Like I was a casting reader for The Matrix, the movie The Matrix. I was the guy who played Neo, and I read with a lot of the people you see on the screen. I was on the other side of the table while they were auditioning. I knew that movie backwards and forwards. When I saw it, there was a lot about it I was disappointed with. And Joe Rogan came in, and there was a movie that I was playing a reader for. I had a small part in it as well. I play. I played. If you ever want to go see it, you can. It was Hellraiser Inferno. I believe that was it. Hellraiser Inferno, and I played. I played security guard. That's it. I think one of my lines was, "Don't you fucking move," something like that. I was watching it. I'd forgotten that I was in it. I was watching it, and I'm watching it, and I hear me, because you hear me off camera as I'm screaming, "Don't you fucking move!" And I'm, what? And the camera pans to me, with 175 pounds and all my hair on my head. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right, I did that movie." And I have to say, I did a pretty damn good job, because I sat there and you could see inside. I only had like 2 or 3 lines, but I'm in there and you can see me. I did a damn good job as that. In fact, people would say, "Oh my God, how could you do so much without talking? The way you scanned him up and down and so he came in and he auditioned for that. And as we're sitting there and he's auditioning, if you remember, this would have been at the time when he had just come off of that series. Remember that series? I forget what it was called, the news something series, and he was on that series. He had just come off of that, and it was in reruns, and I was watching it, every night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was watching reruns of it. And he came in between, I don't know what bug had climbed up his ass, but some bug had climbed up his ass that day. And probably he just probably hated being in that B, horror film. He probably hated being there. He probably didn't want to do the part or whatever, or maybe was pissed off that he had to audition for some piece of shit like that. Anyway, and so he's opposite that, and I said, I go to bed with you every night. He looked at me like that. And I said, I mean, not literally. I mean, I watch him. He goes, "Yeah, I know what you meant." He was such an asshole. So anyway, I fantasize about if I ever saw him again and reminding him about that. But I don't know. Again, I'm not so sure why people compare me to him. Cycles within cycles. Question. My chart ruler is Jupiter. I don't know what that means. Do you mean that the ruler of your ascendant? Are we talking about Vedic astrology? Are you talking about your Atmakaraka? You have to be clear about what you're talking about, because you're not being clear with me right now. Is that the Lord of the sign of your ascendant? My chart ruler is Jupiter and guiding planet is Venus. Do you mean your Ishta Devata? What can I do with this information? Well, at the moment, you can't do anything with it because I'm not sure what you're talking about. So let me know that you're talking about Vedic astrology. Are you talking about your Atmakaraka as Jupiter? And are you talking about Venus as your Ishta Devata? And don't guess. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't guess. Otherwise, I can't help you because I don't know. Thank you for wishing me a happy early birthday. Ron C. Question. Is your personal sessions now available with the package, or is your calendar still full? Are you saying that if I put the 3 sessions back on there that you will buy the package at full price? Because I'll have to bring it up to full price. I am kind of hurting for money, so I'm willing to consider that. I don't want to because it's a lot of work and I do have a lot of clients. But at the moment, no. That's just the package without the personal sessions. One thing I can't escape, I'm trying to, I'll be honest with you, I'm trying to get out of doing personal sessions. I'd like to find a way to make a living without having to depend on personal sessions. But I think it's in my chart. My chart is really clear. Saturn is very clear that in terms of my career, my job is to help people get through their problems, which is counseling. It's very hard to counsel people without one-on-one sessions. I may have to just submit to that and just constantly, make myself more available to sessions if I want to survive financially. Let's see. Cycles within cycle. Answer, yes. You have to be more specific. Don't pretend that I know the context of your answer. I don't know what you're answering yes to. Yes what? Be specific, please. George Lagum, already read it. Wealth Shaman 2. You did. So you've read the book, How to, so then you may need to have a session. Because, this is a real thing too. You may need to have somebody on, now I really think I need to make that certification. I really need to train people to know how to listen to what people say and hear what they say and reflect back to them. Because that's the one thing that's left, is you need to have somebody reflect back to you your unconscious. So you have some emotional agendas, as we saw. I could see there's a lot of emotional agendas. Nothing wrong with that, we all do. It's just a question of whether you're conscious of them or not. And so you've got some conflict in terms of what your soul desire is. Because when you know what your soul desire is, you know. But it's okay if you don't know. It really is. I don't want, this isn't Christian church where the pastor sits at the podium and says, "Do you have faith enough to move mountains?" And I'd think, no, I can't move a fucking mountain. I don't have that kind of faith. I'm a bad Christian. Jesus must not love me. I must not love Jesus enough. So it's okay to be conflicted. If you're in conflict about what your soul desire is, that's okay. It means that you need to have somebody who can simply reflect back to you what they see and what they hear, and to ask you the right questions, and then you'll be able to figure it out, and then you might have to get over some resistance. There's going to be some resistance to doing what you truly want to do. Unfortunately, that's the case. There's always resistance. That's one thing people should know. There's always going to be resistance to your soul desire, always. Some people are going to have more resistance than others. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a great example. I don't know what kind of a person he is personally. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can say a lot of nasty things about him. But in terms of his soul desire, he knew it from the get-go. The moment he saw whoever the hell it was, some bodybuilder in some movie, the moment he saw that, he said, I want to be that guy. And no matter what anybody told him, his parents, his mother, his father, people told him he shouldn't be doing that. He said, nope, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to become a movie star, and I'm going to be the most well-developed bodybuilder in the world. And he did it. And he had resistance. It was externalized, and at the very least in his family, and in having to, not having any money and having to make his way to the United States. But resistance is always going to be there. You're going to have to fight for your soul desire. It may just be that you have to work through the pain. It may just be that simple, but it is important to have somebody to reflect back to you. So while I'm here, I need to write myself a note, because if I don't write it down, I won't do it. Create certification for soul desire life coaching. I have to do it now. I said it on video. I wrote it down. I have to do it. Don't get to sit in bed all day, eat Cheetos, and watch Netflix and surf and play video games. I don't play video games. You know when things are bad, when I start fantasizing, should I get that Nintendo Classic thing and start playing video games again? That's when you know you're in resistance to doing your work. All right, let's see here. Heavy D, that's not a question. My stoner impression. Oh, my stoner impression? Yeah, I guess, what's his name? Does he do a stoner? Like, does he have a stoner character? Or is that the way he is? Because I know he basically says people should go out and get high. That's what I see. Anyway, talking about my Joe Rogan impression. Zerlath. Oh, all right, that's something else altogether. Cycles within cycles. Question. Sorry if out of topic, but do you use just the Vedic system? Yes. Do I incorporate both when practicing astrology? I don't use the other one, and the reason I don't use the other one is because it's inaccurate. If it was, because people say, people's need to kiss ass sometimes really drives me crazy. But, people who don't people ass kissing people who can't tolerate conflict, and can't tolerate being, out of the club. First off, let me just say, there are people who legitimately believe in Western astrology and legitimately are into it. I'm not talking about them. There's Western astrologers that can sit there and can very intelligently, I think mistakenly, but they can very intelligently elucidate for you why Western astrology is actually authentic and correct, and they have all kinds of good reasons for it. And there's a lot of Western astrologers who are actually very good. Now, I think they're actually very good because they're able to pick up either by accident or things that happen to be generally true for both Vedic and Western. But having said that, it drives me crazy when people say, it's just 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There's no reason for us to fight. There's, Western astrology and Vedic, and they're both perfectly good. No, we're talking about a science here. We're talking about actual calculations of the stars. And when we're talking about calculating the stars down to specific degrees, we're being very precise. And Western astrology is off from Vedic by 24 degrees and is continuing to go off by 1 degree every 72 years. It is different. It's a totally different. The chart you're looking at is not the same as the Vedic chart. So it's not like it's a different take on it. One is right and one is wrong. You're talking mathematics here. Western astrology is off by 24 degrees. I'm sorry, that's just the case of it. It happens to be a coincidence that Vedic astrology is far more accurate. Listen, I've got, of somebody I'm very close to, I don't want to mention, but somebody I'm very close to, who has been following Western astrology for years and has a Western astrologer and blah, blah, blah. And I've been telling him, that, Western astrology is off. And, he's been asked, as a friend, I give him readings on this and that. And he comes to me more and more often. And lately he's like, oh my God, this is so accurate. I'm like, yes, it is. Western astrology's off. This stuff is right on target. So no, I don't incorporate the two at all. Again, if you watch my channel, all you have to do is type in the search engine within my channel for astrology, and you'll see a bunch of videos, and one will come up about why Western astrology is off. Cycles within cycles. I encourage you to watch more of my videos. Heavy D is defending my Hellraiser movie. I think Zerloth is saying that there's only 3. There's actually a truth to it. Heavy D is right. No, Zerloth is right. The movie Hellraiser Inferno was written by a guy I went to college with. He's one of those people that's in that resentment list in my K2, because I was actually like an older brother type guy to him in college. We went to Christian college together, and then I stopped being a Christian, and then I graduated and went off to Cal State, or I left and I went off to Cal State Fullerton and I studied theater. He went off to USC and studied directing, and he's making movies now, making big movies. Not a lot, but he's out there making them. And I'm pissed at the guy because he took me in, because I was like, we acted together. I forgot about this. We acted together. We did college theater together. I totally forgot about that. And he looked up to me as like, his one of his mentors about acting and all of that. And when he was in directing graduate school, he had me come in and act in his student films, which he used to get Hellraiser Inferno. He used my film with me in it because I did such a good job to help him get that. And now he has this career, and I haven't seen hide nor hair from him. The moment he got famous and he had no use for me, never saw him again. So I have a lot of resentment over that. That was really hurtful to me because there was all these promises of, hey man, and you just me and you together, and I'm going to make a star out of you, and you're going to be my leading man, and you're the best actor in the world, and it was an interesting experience because when I went and did that, he had me come in, said you should need this guy to come in. And part of it was to see if he could get me the part. And he's like, if I could get you that lead part, I'd give it to you. Because I did the test shoot for that movie. He made I don't know how long it was. It was like a 10-minute test shoot with like the whole lights and everything. They gave him like $100,000 and said, okay, if you want to be director, go prove it to us. Go make 10 minutes of this movie. And I was the lead. And he wanted, and so he was trying to get me in to see if I could make it. But what I found about that business, this was an eye-opening thing for me. When I sat in and I was the reader for that, and the casting people, first off, know nothing about art, acting, filmmaking. They know nothing. They're literally right out of the mailroom, literally. I'm not kidding. One of them talked about, I was in the mailroom, and then some producer said, hey, you're going to be a casting director on this film. And they do things like they cast this. Have you noticed that the same, like unless somebody's a huge star, they're always cast in the same kinds of films, even if they play completely different characters, if it's all science fiction. You'll see those same people in science fiction movies, even though they're, in one they're playing a nurse, and another one they're playing an alien, and another one they're playing. It has nothing to do with their acting ability, but it's because that's the idiocy of casting directors. Oh, he only does sci-fi, right? They're idiots. And then the producers come in. And the producers are all MBAs. They're not artists either. They haven't learned acting or directing. They haven't spent any time working on any kind of craft. They don't know anything about writing, directing. They're money people. But these are the people who are making all the big decisions. And so they're looking for big stars because they think a big star is going to make them big money. And so they come in and they start going through, we don't know anybody with that guy. Why can't we get any stars in here? And I'm listening to them, having no interest in the people that are actually coming in. They're watching people coming in, some really good actors coming in. They have no interest in them because I don't know who this guy is. And, and I got really upset at one point, and I said to my friend, I said, what are you doing? How come you're not getting me in there? And he says, I don't have any power. I'm just the director. He says, I don't make any of the decisions about any of the acting. They're making all of the decisions for me. And then at the end, you hear them talking about they're going to get their cousin and their niece. And so all of the, they try and get big names for the big roles. And then all the other roles, it's somebody's niece and somebody's. But for some reason, they have to audition hundreds of actors. And they don't cast any of them. It's just, that was when I just said, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with this. It was a real waste of time. All right, let's see what else. I'm totally wasting your time with my personal stories. I hope that's entertaining for you. If not, my apologies. But the point is Zarelath is right. There was only 3 real Hellraisers because the Hellraiser Inferno was written and directed by my Christian friend. And the whole point of that Hellraiser Inferno was that it has a Christian theme to it. That's why it's so stupid. I mean, it was a stupid movie. Let's just face it. It was a stupid Hellraiser. And it was stupid because it was written by a Christian who was trying to he wants to be a filmmaker, but he's a Christian, so he has to make everything have a Christian, Anyway, I won't say his name. If you want to figure it out, you can go look him up. But he's right. Zarelath is right. That Hellraiser was not written by the guy whoever wrote the original Hellraiser. So he's right. There's probably only 3 that are written by him. So even though Heavy D, I appreciate that you're defending me. The name is actually a Hellraiser movie, but it wasn't written by the same guy. And so in that sense, Heavy D is right. Cycles within cycles. Question. Yes, to your question, you asked, Mr. Thunder, you asked if you should offer that soul desire on page. I don't understand your question. Or your clarification, I don't understand it. Do you use Vedic sits right with me? I don't understand what you just said. Sorry. Let's see here. No questions? No questions. Ron C. Question. Is the lockdown package a one-time fee or is it monthly? I wish it was monthly. If that were a monthly fee and I could get people to pay that to me on a monthly basis, no, it's a one-time fee. Holy crap. I wish it was monthly. No, you're saving $2,000. I mean, I'm giving you, you're paying for it, and on top of that, you're getting $2,000 worth of stuff. It's an incredible deal. I wouldn't recommend waiting because I will I will get rid of that soon. George Lagham question about multiple soul desires. For instance, is being shaman your second soul desire? No. Or is it only a tool for you to be able to serve frequently? Yes. Now, let me be really clear about it. My dharma and my karma are very strongly associated with me being a shaman. In other words, being a shaman is not some frivolous, superficial thing that I've decided to do. So one of the things that I teach people is that my motto is only make money doing what I would do anyway. So the truth is that, as you can tell, I'm so opinionated. I can't keep my mouth shut about things that I'm passionate about. It would be impossible for me not to have a YouTube channel doing everything that I'm doing right now. I would have to do it for my own sanity. The books that I wrote for my own sanity. I didn't have any inkling or desire to become an author. I could care less if people buy my books or not. There's no money in it. The only way to make money as an author is if you become like a bestseller and you sell, thousands and thousands of, and I don't. So there's really no money in it. If I'm lucky, I make a few $100s a month if I'm lucky. On books, DVDs, I make almost nothing on all that stuff. In fact, I don't even calculate it in when I'm thinking about how much I got to pay for rent or whatever. I don't even calculate that few $100s in. It's so insignificant. But it's definitely something I have to do, not because it's my sole desire, but because if I don't, I'll go crazy. And as it so happens, I don't believe in doing any work for, working for other people. I don't believe in doing anything I don't want to do. And so that is my motto. I only make money doing what I would do anyway. Now, if you happen to love sitting behind a desk, some people do, and whatever it is that you're doing behind that desk, if that's something that you would do anyway, then by all means go get a job and work for, Acme paper widgets. Go do it. But and sometimes people's job and their soul desire are the same thing. But your job, at the very least, will most likely give you the money to go do your soul desire. Some people, if somebody's sole desire is to be a famous musician, and by the way, somebody could have the sole desire of a musician and not be a famous musician. But somebody's sole desire and their purpose and their career might be the same thing. My career happens to be helping people transform their lives through shamanic principles. That happens to be my career. Now there's, as I said, I see it in my chart. It was shown to be by my. I'd like to figure out how he figured that out. I don't know the method of how he figured it out, but there's a way to figure it out. And he told me, he said, your job is, you've got Saturn in the 6th house, so your job is to help people overcome their problems. So a counselor, so he told me that years ago. It just happened to be that that's what that's where the money is. I'm always trying new avenues of making money, but it always seems, and I say this reluctantly, because it's a lot of work. I end up making the most money when I'm interacting with people. In fact, the videos that make the most money are these live videos. And I'm not committing to it yet, but I'm getting close. I really need to nail down a specific day and time schedule of when I'm going to do my live chats, because that's when I make the most money. Interacting with you guys one-on-one, whether it be on this or whether it be on Skype, that's where I make the most money. And I say it reluctantly because I don't want to do it. It's hard work. But it is something that I would do anyway. I would always counsel people, and I'm always happier when I counsel people. So I hope I answered your question. No, Cujo and Drino, that is... Oh, no, actually, I don't know. Did Bloodline come before Inferno? Inferno went straight to video. So that was not... Was it in the theater? I went and saw it at the screening. And I have to tell you, when I said my line, "Don't you dare fucking move," everybody stood up and clapped. It was the most amazing experience they'd ever had. Faitiha Hirsi question. Do you allow everyone who's interested in your program? I don't know. Which program are you talking about? Or do you go with your gut feeling to determine who's meant to become a student? Nope. If you're willing to go onto thunderwizard.com and become an apprentice, I'll work with anybody. I haven't turned anybody away yet. The truth is, you're more likely to walk away from me than I am from you. Because if you're going to work with me personally, we're probably going to run into some resistance, and which is something that has to happen, and you'll have to make the decision to work through that resistance with me. I've never turned anybody away. So to answer your question, no, I don't. I allow anyone. If you're willing to pay to be my apprentice, hello and welcome. But that right there sort of proves your dedication. When people aren't willing to pay for something, they don't really want it. They complain about it. I've had people in tears complaining about, not having something of mine that was actually quite this is one that just, when people say they don't have enough money to subscribe at the Thunder Wizard site. Seriously, you don't have $25 a month? You don't have that? You don't have $50 a month? Really? You don't have that? I really want to subscribe. I just don't have the money. Really? You have, really, there's no, you don't have, how do you eat? So the truth is, if I've ever wanted anything, even if I've been broke, I've always found a way to get the money. Whether I'm begging, borrowing, stealing, credit cards, I've always found a way. So if somebody really wants something, they'll find a way. One of the guys that I did the theater with, who he really wanted to drive a Mercedes. He really wanted to look like a Hollywood bigwig. It was important for him to have a Mercedes, and he found a Mercedes and he drove it, and it was a piece of crap, and it was constantly dying on him. But he found a Mercedes. You know what I mean? If you want it bad enough, you'll find it. Anyway, that's not anything against you, Fatia. To answer your question, I'll work with you. Sure. I don't care. Zerlath question. What is your wisdom about how I recently was meditating to connect with Shiva? I ended up seeing Shiva was an illusion of Loki, whom is the accusative case, not the nominative case. Shiva was an illusion of Loki, who, because it's acting like the subject. Loki, who, so you don't put the M on it. Shiva was an illusion of Loki who almost enticed me into doing harm to others. Who enticed you? Shiva almost enticed you, or Loki almost enticed you? That's your unconscious. My wisdom, that is your unconscious. That wasn't Loki or Shiva. Because neither of those guys are going to entice you into doing harm to others. That is your unconscious projection. Let me make sure I got that right. I recently was meditating to connect with Shiva. I ended up seeing Shiva was an illusion of Loki who almost enticed me into doing harm to others. That was, at best, your connection with Shiva was showing you your violence and your wanting to spiritualize your violence. And how is Shiva an illusion of Loki? I don't completely disagree with the idea that Shiva is the illusion of Loki, because Shiva is another manifestation of Woden. Woden and Shiva are the same entity. How do I know that? Because they have the same name and they have the same function. One is Mercury and the other one is, if I had to pick a planet, would be, well, if I had to pick a planet, it would be more Jupiter, because he's the guru. But Shiva doesn't, Shiva actually has multiple planetary. Mahadeva, by the way, the name that I chose for my spiritual name, which was actually given to me in a dream, which now Zeralath could say was my unconscious projection. That's actually the lunar vibration of Shiva, Mahadeva. The moon is my Dharma Devata, and the moon is the planet in my first house, which means I identify with my moon. So even though I didn't know that when I was given that name, it works out really well. But getting back to this, is Shiva the illusion of Loki? I'm not quite sure I know what you mean by that, but it has this feeling like Loki had a Shiva mask on, like he was pretending to be Shiva. Loki is Rahu. Now, as it turns out, Shiva is the Lord of Rahu, because Shiva is Nageshwara, Naga. This is why, again, the East Indian languages and the English language are the same language. What do you see in there? You see I have to show it to you first. Do you see any similarities there? Naga and snake, the middle vowel, ag, ak. It's the same word. Snake is the English pronunciation of Naga. Naga is the Sanskrit pronunciation of snake. He is Nageshwara. Eshwara means Lord. Nageshwara is Lord of the snakes. That's why he has snakes around his wrists. So if anybody is pretending to be anybody, it would be Shiva pretending to be Loki. But the other thing that's somewhat accurate about that is that Odin and Loki are blood brothers. And there is good evidence in the mythology that they are the flip side of each other. That Loki is the shadow side of Odin. So I'm not completely in disagreement with that. I kind of don't like how it feels, what you're saying about it. But again, I don't believe that either of them enticed you to do harm to others. I don't believe that for a second. I believe that you had that dream. I just don't believe that's what they were doing, if they were doing anything. George, question. Are following soul desire and dharma the same thing? Dharma is your true path. So I'm following my true path right now by doing this teaching. Is it my soul desire? No. I'd rather be surfing. But it is definitely part of my dharma, my orlog. my destiny, my true path. So your soul desire will be part of your dharma, but your dharma encompasses multiple things. You're overthinking it, George. You're overthinking it. You're overthinking it because you're in conflict. So what really needs to happen for you, George, is you really need to understand what part of you on an unconscious level is trying to please somebody else. You're trying to get love, acceptance, approval. I'm not judging it. Don't judge it. You're trying to follow that programming, the false programming, and your unconscious is trying to turn that into your soul desire. That's why you're so confused about it. So you do need some counseling. You need somebody who can help you. Because if I talk to you, I could help you figure it out probably in 15 minutes, depending on how able you were to be honest with yourself. So Zerlath says, I became suspicious of the advice Shiva was giving, and I asked Shiva, are you the trickster? He vanished, and Loki appeared behind me and said, well done. Well, I mean, I can't really find anything wrong with that. I think there was a good lesson. I mean, if the end result was that you were being tempted to commit violence and you chose not to do it and you questioned it, and then Loki, the trickster, says, well done, that is something Loki would do. So I guess I don't question what happened. I'll accept that. That sounds like a good... You and I are coming to the same conclusion, which is neither Loki or Shiva would tempt you to commit violence. If anything, they want to bring that to your attention. So I would agree with that. Fatia Hersey question, you have talked about the serpent energy and the sign of Ophiuchus in the past. Do you see any correlation with the current Ketu Rahu transit? No, I don't. I don't know the Ophiuchus sign. I'm not going to do any more Ophiuchus videos. That was me trying to get more views and more subscribers on the channel. And there's, a period, and I go through these periods where my channel, if it feels like it's stuck, I'll try and get it moving along. I'm giving up on that. I mean, it's going to do what it's going to do. So the whole Ophiuchus thing was, it was my way of dealing with people's victim mentality in a way where I could do it without, just tearing them a new one. So I was trying to find a way to make a parody of the whole reptilian thing, and have my channel become more successful and make more money. And I just gave up after a while. So I'm not going to do that anymore, because the truth is I don't know anything about Ophiuchus. I don't know anything about, that sign. I'm told it's the 13th sign in Western astrology and all that stuff. And if it still worked for me, I'd still be doing it. It stopped working, and I ended up losing subscribers. And interestingly, when I stopped doing it and I even stopped making a lot of videos, my subscriptions started going back up again. So anyway, there you go. No more questions. I've been on for a long time now. How long have I been on? It says average watch time 15 minutes. Does that mean people come and after 15 minutes they just click off? I don't blame you. I wouldn't even watch for 15 minutes. I've been on for almost 3 hours. Question, my moon is in Mula Nakshatra, which I believe is in Ophiuchus. Could you talk about that? No, I just said I don't know a damn thing about Ophiuchus. Moon in Mula, that means your moon, so is it in Sagittarius? Because if your moon is in Mula in Sagittarius, it means that your mind is in emptiness. There's a black hole in the center of not the solar system, of our galaxy. And it means that your mind is in this center of the galaxy. So your mind is in emptiness, but it could mean that your mind feels you have a hard time. Could be very spiritual place for the moon. It means that your meditations can be very powerful. All right, that's it for me. I'm running out of steam. I've been on too long, so I'm going to go away here. That's it. Again, guys, the lockdown package is coming to an end soon. I strongly recommend it. Thunderwizard.com. Please subscribe. That's the first time I've ever said please subscribe. Please subscribe. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, you want me to do more of these 3-hour videos, I need subscribers. And my goal is to have, as many Thunder Wizard subscribers as I have on the channel. If I did that, I'd be on here all the time, every spare moment I had. Courses.thunderwizard.com for all the books and DVDs and other things you can't get on the lockdown package. If you want to achieve enlightenment, there's 2 things you have to do. You have to subscribe and hit the bell button. If you do that, you will achieve enlightenment. All right, that's it for me. See you all later.